Welcome to episode 2 of the Sebastian Scales Show, which I think is going to be called Seb Show, because Sebastian Scales Show is such a mouthful. So, welcome back to Seb Show. You don't have to worry about anything. Ever. Nobody's forcing you to. Other than maybe the conditioning that we've received over the course of our lives that makes us think that if we're not constantly planning and preparing and considering what's happened in the past and reliving all of these experiences and hypothesizing about the future, that things are not going to go our way. Maybe that's why we do it so much. Who knows? But you definitely don't have to do it if you don't want to. And it's a weird thing to sort of register that all of the worrying that I personally have done in my entire life has been for nothing. No amount of worrying makes any impact on what's actually going to happen, especially when you consider the things that we're worrying about most of the time, whether it's what people think about us or how we're going to die. For those two examples especially, like how we're going to die, I'd say close to 100% of people, unless you get a medical diagnosis for how you're going to die, nobody knows. And then you just die. Some of the time it's immediate, an accident of some kind. Sometimes it's an illness. But we're so rarely right about it, and yet we think about it all the time. And then even when we are right about it, the fact that we were worried about it made no difference. Like if you spent your whole life worrying about getting cancer and then you got cancer and then the fact that you were thinking about it a bunch didn't help you not get it. Certainly you can do things to prevent things from happening. But if the way that you're spending your time worrying is not productive, like in terms of making conscious decisions to eat different things. If there are certain things that are known to be carcinogenic, then removing those things from your diet, sure. But I'm talking about like just worrying about death, for example. And none of us know what it's like when we die. People have come back from being clinically dead and tend to tell similar experiences of like, yeah, it was pretty peaceful. It was a light and it felt pretty safe and calm. But in terms of what happens after, nobody knows. And yet we create all of these hypothetical scenarios for what happens after, just like as if us thinking about it is gonna help somehow, when we know that it won't. And then thinking about things like what people think about us. I mean, like I made a TikTok video about how the point of it was nobody is thinking the things that you're worried they're thinking about you. Just a friendly reminder that no one is thinking the things that you're worried they're thinking about you. Everyone's gonna die. So who gives a fuck? Literally. About anything. What a place to live. And some big TikToker stitched that, which means he like responded to the video and he was like, friendly reminder that no one is thinking the things that you're worried they're thinking about.
You don't know that. Have you talked to them? Can you confirm?
And that's the consistent reaction to that video is like, prove it. And of course I don't know. Of course I haven't talked to every person that I've ever met in my entire life, see if they're thinking negative things about me. But nobody knows. And so it's a matter of interpretation. It's up to you to decide, are all of these people thinking these horrible things about me? Or are they potentially thinking about all the things that everybody else is thinking about them? Or are they thinking nothing about me or anyone else? It's all a matter of perspective, and it's up to you to decide. And having lived the majority of my life in that anxious mindset, worrying constantly about what people think of me, how I'm being perceived, and embarrassing shit that I did 5, 10, 20 years ago, like having been doing that and now experimenting with a different outlook and mindset of just giving people the benefit of the doubt, giving people the chance to be thinking something positive about me or just not thinking about me at all. It is amazing what you can do with the energy that you have available to you when you're not worrying, when you're not spending all of the time that you have just stressed and freaking out about all of these hypotheticals that you have no confirmation about. Like, I feel like people that say that, they're like, well, you don't know that they're not thinking those things about you. Those people, it's like, okay, well, what's the point then? So you're like, I'm planning, I'm trying to figure out what people are thinking about me, and if it's negative, I want to hypothesize about that so that I can do something the next time that I see them to like make them like me, I guess, is the end goal. To prepare yourself for battle next time you see them, to say something that, you know, you showed them, right? To get back at them for thinking these things that you don't know if they're thinking about you, but let's just go along with it. If they were thinking these things about you, you would be prepared for whatever next time you see them. And to somebody who is thinking like that, I would ask or just comment on like the goal of that. You're spending the time that you have here on Earth trying to get people that you're presuming don't like you to like you, or to prevent them from being in a situation where they will be able to further solidify their belief that you suck. So you're going to prevent that. You're spending this moment, the only thing that ever exists and will ever exist right now. You're spending that time that you have, this miracle of existence, trying to get people to like you. People who might already like you. It would be crazy to see the breakdown of like how often you're right about the things that you are worried about, and how often you're wrong. And not only wrong, but like the people that you're worried about what they think about you actually like you. It would be interesting to see the numbers. But it's just like, what do you want your life to be like? Because there's infinite negative things that people could be thinking about you, and infinite positive things that people could be thinking about you. So which one do you want to assume is going on? And I've been telling myself, I feel like I have a hard time taking my own advice sometimes. And that video that really resonated with people, it's like, I need to register that like that is true. People are not thinking the things that I'm worried they're thinking about me. And even if there are people that are thinking super negative things about me, fine, good. Hopefully they will get out of your life. You don't want to be around people like that anyway, so good, let them leave. I've been telling myself that more recently, consciously. Like if I find myself worrying, I'll just be like, hey, they're not thinking about that. They're not thinking about some dumb shit that you did in the past, or something that you said, whatever you're worried about them thinking about you. It's not happening. And the more you break out of the habitual thought patterns that exist in your mind, in my mind, in a lot of our minds, the more you consciously step away from that, the easier it becomes to like settle back into your own experience. And what a different experience it is when you are not in your head constantly thinking about negative hypotheticals. It is so much more fun to be alive when you're not overthinking. And analyzing, like, is there any truth in this thing that I'm worried about? Is this real? Or is this just something that I completely just fabricated out of habit? And I guess it could all be traced back to like survival. And, maybe that's the root of our need to be liked, is because we want to survive, and from like a tribal perspective, you want as many people on your side as possible. But it's just, we don't, there's a lot of things that we have that were beneficial evolutionarily to keep going, to keep surviving and evolving, that we don't need anymore. Like, if somebody comes up to if somebody says that we're a fucking idiot, which somebody said to me today, and I'll get into that in a second, but if somebody says something like that to you, our bodies so often will respond immediately into fight or flight mode, and you're just gone, you black out, and some of us react immediately, and they're like, no, you're a fucking idiot, and we're just, so many of us are so quick to just absolutely lose touch of the fact that, like, there's no real physical danger. It's purely verbal interaction that I guess you could argue that could potentially turn physical, but most of the time it doesn't. And yet we're reacting as if it already has happened. But it's just an attack on our ego, I guess. I'm not a fucking idiot. You're a fucking idiot. Oh, good point. But talking about evolution, how did I get here? I'm not sure. But today, I was driving my car to the beach with my roommate, and we found a spot to park, but I had to whip a U-turn, and it was a super tight street. So I ended up doing this, like, it felt like an 18-point turn, and there was this guy who was parked across the street from where I was trying to park, and he was just watching me do it, and I was like holding up traffic. It wasn't a lot of traffic, but I was definitely holding it up, and I wasn't doing a particularly good job. And he said, he like commented, he was like, this is a bad decision. He had his window down and my window was down, and we were like right next to each other face to face. He was like, this is a bad decision. And I was like, well, thank you. I just turned to him and was like, yeah, nice. That's helpful. I appreciate that in this moment. Now that I know that it was a bad decision, it's a lot easier to get out of it. So thank God you're here, man. No idea who this guy is. He was probably maybe 50 or 60 in a truck. And so I eventually got through, but it took an extended period of time. And right before I started to park, he was like, yeah, nice decision, you fucking idiot. Nice decision, you fucking idiot, is what this stranger said to me. He has no idea who I am or what I am doing or what I've been through, or, it's a wild chance to take that I'm not insane and that I don't just get out of my car and just beat you to death. Of course, I would never do that, but people are certainly quite comfortable behind the wheel of a car. I feel like that guy wouldn't have said that to me if he was just standing next to my car. But he said that, and I think in the past I would have immediately gone into fight or flight mode, where it's like, okay, this guy's attacking my intelligence. This guy's attacking my prowess as a human being. My brain would have found some way to interpret it that all of a sudden would potentially justify in my mind me reacting probably massively over the top, and who knows what I would have done. I'm not a violent person, but I definitely would have said something back to him, and I just laughed. He said that to me, and I just laughed, and my roommate laughed too, and it was like, it's a funny moment to be in, because every interaction that we have with another person, it's up to us to determine how we respond to it. And in that moment, I had all the workings, all the potential to just ruin my day, and to just get in his face and be like, who the fuck are you? Or, some dumb ego argument with no basis, like, okay, sick, dude, like, you're a better driver than me, I guess. But there's so many different directions that interaction could have gone that would have resulted in me not only feeling bad in that moment, but potentially for so long after. I mean, you think about things that we worry about that happened many years ago that just pop into our heads, and it's like, oh, fuck. And then you start reliving that and physically having the feelings that you had before. You know, this could have turned into one of those moments. And maybe 4 years from now, instead of thinking about whatever was happening in the moment, 4 years from now, I'll be reliving that experience of that argument that I got in with that stranger who called me a fucking idiot. So I didn't do that. I laughed, and I don't think he liked that very much. Whenever people are mad at you, if you start laughing, it really does have a pretty hilarious impact on their demeanor, because it just like not only diffuses the situation, but makes them feel kind of silly for getting to that point, which couldn't have been less provoked. You know, we went from saying nothing to each other to just all of a sudden like, wow, this guy really hates my guts. But it felt good to not accept the anger that he was providing me with, and the hostility and the negative experience that he clearly was having. I mean, I think it's unlikely that he was having a great day. And then I showed up and was bad at parking, and so that just ruined his whole day to the point where he was like, you're a fucking idiot. He's probably not having a great time. And being cognizant of that, you know, like being aware of the circumstances that the people who are mean to you or do you wrong may be in, and giving them the benefit of the doubt. And it's almost like an immediate forgiveness. Like, you know, not only am I not going to be affected by this negative energy that you're trying to put on me, but I'm going to wish you well and recognize that I'm not the reason that you're feeling like this. Sometimes I might be, but even in that case, you know, it's not intentional. I did not park in that spot because I wanted to piss you off. I didn't know who you were 8 seconds ago, and now we're ready to fight. So it can be helpful in situations like that, and in all sorts of situations, to just you can let go of any sort of negative feelings that might be bubbling up in you as a result of how somebody else is behaving towards you, just by realizing that it's probably totally unrelated to you, the reason they're feeling the way that they're feeling. So in my head, I just kind of thought that and laughed it off, and then I parked. And he was still there, you know, with his window down, just kind of scowling at us. And I looked at him. I got out of the car and we got our stuff, and I closed the door and I looked at him and I said, "Hey, man, I hope you have a great day." Which I don't think he liked very much. He didn't say anything. He just stared at me and then looked forward. But it felt good. It's like, instead of beginning to be this thing where it's like, okay, for the rest of now my beach day is going to be ruined because I'm thinking about all the cool comebacks that I could have had to this 50-year-old dude who, you know, might have just had somebody die in his family, or maybe he lost something significant materially, whatever the reason is that he's feeling this way, and I happen to be the target of this anger, aggression, whatever, you know. Instead of harboring any of those feelings, like, I just moved on with the day, and my roommate and I were joking about it, and that was it. And it was nice. It was nice. It went from being a potential fight or flight moment to a moment of humor. And I think it just kind of all sort of ties together with this idea that, like, you don't have to worry. I don't have to worry about what that guy thought of me in that moment. I don't have to worry that he really didn't like me in that moment. I don't have to accept what he says as the truth. In fact, if I'm responding to him when he calls me a fucking idiot, and I'm like, "No, I'm not, dude. I'm super smart. I'm a qualified academic. You're an idiot. Nice truck." Whatever I would say in the moment. You don't have to. Certainly there are things that might trigger you to react that way, but you don't have to. And it makes it a lot easier to go through life knowing that your experience does not have to be dictated by anybody else. Misery loves company. And just in the same way that that guy had no idea how I would react to him saying all this stuff about me, I don't know how he would have reacted to me saying stuff back to him. Maybe he was an insane person, and he would have, slashed my tires or something if I had talked shit back. Potentially. But it feels good to be in this new mindset, and I feel a lot happier all of the time. Of course, I feel down sometimes, but the more I let go of worrying and needing to control things and needing everybody to like me, the more you let go of all of that, the easier everything becomes and the more people like you. I mean, it feels like everybody says that, right? Everybody's like, don't care what other people think about you. But then you really see somebody who's like that, and it's like, wow, like, and I'm not fully there yet, of course, but I'm working on it, and it feels good. But I think that the more you stop caring about what people think of you and whether or not people like you, the more the people that you're surrounded by will like you, and the more you'll like them, because you know that they're liking you for who you really are and not some facade of a person that you're trying to be to get them to like you. Nobody likes when you can tell that somebody's trying to get you to like them. So even if you are, it's like you're having the opposite effect of what your goal is. And like even this podcast, it's taking me such an insane amount of time to actually record it and do it, because I'm worried about how people will perceive it, instead of just not even having that thought and just doing it because I'm enjoying doing it and because it's fun. If you're having fun doing what you're doing, people will have fun watching you do it. It goes for everything, especially content. But even just like day-to-day interactions, life, if you're hanging around people who aren't having a good time, it's palpable and it's not something that you want to be around. So anything that you can do to lighten the load on yourself and make your experience more enjoyable is, in my opinion, definitely worth considering, or at least trying out. That's what it's like, the guy who responded to that video so negative, or not so negatively, but he was like, prove that they are not thinking those things. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, what did I just say? Fuck. Like I was talking about how the reason we're all so negative is that it's just habitual. It's how we've been brought up, the need to worry. And if you don't worry, nothing's going to happen for you. Everything's going to go wrong, yada, yada. It's like you try it out. If you're one of those people who feels like you can't stop worrying and you can't let it go and you can't not plan everything out, just experiment for a little bit. Try spending 5 minutes not thinking about stuff. And it's not that you're physically trying to not think, but just if thoughts pop into your head that are worrisome, allow them to be there without feeling like, okay, now I need to think about more things. Just be aware of it. This is just like meditation 101, but it's an experiment that you should try. People feel like the world is going to end if they stop worrying. But if you'll find out very quickly that nothing changes. And if anything, all it will do probably is show you that you don't need to be worrying, at least to the degree that you are. Doesn't mean you have to stop worrying about everything immediately forever. I still worry about things all the time, but it's the frequency at which you do it and the length of time at which you spend worrying just from one thought. One silly thought that may or may not be real can trigger minutes, hours, days, months, years worth of anxiety and for the future additional worries. So it's like, for somebody who feels like they can't stop, I would just say, give it a shot. Try it. You can always start worrying again as soon as you finish. but just see what happens. See how it feels. It just recently, consciously telling myself when I find myself worrying about what people think, consciously being like, they're not thinking that about you. You have no proof that they're thinking that about you. And just in the same way, you don't have any proof that they're not thinking that about you. But until it's a reality, I will not worry about it. And then if it does become a reality, you have all of this energy available to you that you were previously just spending, wasting, worrying, that is now available to you to actually handle the situation in a way that would be infinitely better than you could have ever done whilst worrying. It feels like most of the time things happen that we need that energy for, but we've been too busy worrying that we're not prepared at all, and then we're just like not even reacting like how we need to. We're just thinking about some other thing that could be worse or whatever it is. A reallocation of energy is sort of, I guess, the point of this particular episode. Let's see, I got my little notebook here. I'm still trying to figure out this solo podcast thing because I really do enjoy doing it. But I have such terrible memory sometimes, so it helps to have it written down. So far, don't have to worry. Of course, I don't know, but neither do you. So what sort of an experience do you want to have? Because nobody's like stoked to be worrying. Nobody's happy when they're worrying. You might get a sense of security because you think that you're doing what needs to be done to prevent what you're worried about happening. But that's just all made up in your head. And it's not a real feeling of relief, because it's relief accompanied and infused with anxiety and worry and fear. So what sort of an experience do you want to have? All we're doing constantly is just projecting our own life experience out into the world. And whatever our current internal feeling is becomes what our external experience is like. So if you're living in a state of fear, you're very likely to be projecting that outward. A state of anger, that guy in the car, in his truck. That dude is probably not a happy camper at the moment. And knowing that, again, it's like it makes it a lot easier to not be affected by what he's saying, because I don't know what's happened to him, but I don't want to make it any worse for him. Even if he thinks I'm a fucking idiot, that's okay. If I made all of my life decisions based on what people in trucks think of me, I'd have a very different life experience. So, ooh, this is fun, dude. Can't make your life decisions based on people in trucks. It feels good. And maybe that would be the extent of it for this podcast. Not forcing it to go on for any reason. So thank you guys for tuning in to episode 2, or whatever episode this ends up being. I will see you in the next one. Peace.